With the recent death of visionary director David Lynch, it just seemed like the perfect time to discuss what I consider to be one of his most underrated projects, Dune. Frank Herbert's seminal 1965 sci-fi masterpiece was for a long time considered unfilmable, though not for want of trying. Since its publication, there were several attempts, not least by Chilean director Alejandro Jodorowsky, using crazy concepts from the surrealist artists Moebius and H.R. Geiger. There were plans for Salvador Dali and Orson Welles to star. Pink Floyd would have done the soundtrack. It would have been quite something, but sadly, it never went into full production. There is a fascinating documentary, Jodorowsky's Dune, that is on YouTube at the moment. I'll link it below. It's well worth a watch. When that failed, Ridley Scott, fresh from his success on Alien, was set up to bring the project to life, again with Giger attached. Sadly, Scott also dropped out in pre-production following the death of his brother. He went on to make a little film called Blade Runner instead. Eventually, the film landed in David Lynch's lap. It was an extremely troubled production process, with a lot of interference from the studio and many clashes over artistic direction, with Universal and Dino De Laurentiis constantly reining in Lynch's surrealist takes and trying to make it a more orthodox blockbuster. They wanted a contender to Star Wars, which had taken the world by storm. Without a final cut option in his contract, Lynch saw his creation butchered post-production, with his 4 hours of recorded material hacked down to just over 2 hours. Lynch, who had planned a 3-hour cut, disowned the movie. There was never a director's cut released, and Lynch removed his name from the credits of the hastily assembled 3 hours extended cut, with the dreaded Alan Smithee appearing in the credits instead. Dune was a wound that would stay with Lynch until his death.
I didn't have final cut on that film, so I didn't have final cut on The Elephant Man either, but Mel, in effect, gave it to me, and that's the big lesson. Don't make a film if it can't be the film you want to make. It's a joke, and a sick joke, and it'll kill you.
He never got over his treatment, and up until a couple of years ago, expressed his wish to have one more go at giving us a cut of the movie that matched his vision. It's a shame that we'll never get it. The theatrical release of Dune flopped badly, adding to Lynch's hurt. It only took $30 million on a hefty $45 million budget. The studio had gambled and lost. Would it have done better if Lynch's off-the-wall version of the film had been presented to the public instead? We'll never know. And now, 41 years after its release, and a month after David Lynch's death, I'm going to defend David Lynch's Dune. In doing so, though, I am going to have to address its failings. I will also be comparing it to the more recent versions by Denis Villeneuve. First off, it cannot be denied that David Lynch's Dune is compromised. Much of the deep sociological content of the book and the details around the Fremen are missing.
In the book, Frank Herbert's got a trillion ideas. Some of them are sprouted, and some of them aren't really sprouted. And he was great encouraging me to, if I fell in love with something and found a way to, to make it work, to sprout those ideas. And so everything passes through a director's filter, even though it's someone else's material. I had a lot of leeway within it, and it all comes through this filter.
Big liberties are taken with the story, and some elements of the narrative are skipped nearly entirely. Attempting a 4-hour cut of the unfilmable book was ambitious. A 3-hour cut would have been crazy. A 2-hour and change cut? Impossible. Dune is not a quick action-packed book. It was never going to be a orthodox blockbuster. It has a pace and depth far beyond that of your normal sci-fi epic. What Lynch had envisioned was a toned-down version of the absolutely bonkers Jodorowsky film. He had very specific ideas of how the characters and the world would look. And even in the final version, the Gigeresque leanings of the architecture are undeniable. The Harkonnens would be gloriously OTT 80s villains, sadistic and cruel, a stark contrast to the disciplined and ordered House Atreides. And this leads to one of the first things that I really like about Dune 1984, the look of the film. It's undeniably avant-garde, the opulence of the Emperor's Palace, the weird otherworldliness of the Navigators Guild, the giant utilitarian spaceships, the sandworms, the Bene Gesserit. Every single aspect of the look of the film just screams Lynch. Even the toned-down colour palette adds to the ambience of the film. The slovenly, pseudo-cybergoth slob look of the Harkonnens is iconic. The Gom Jabbar is iconic.
I hold at your neck, the Gom Jabbar.
Don't pull away or you'll feel the poison.
The Hunter-Killer, even the clunky, crude VFX of the belt shield is iconic. It all sticks in the mind. It's just a work of art, even if at times it skews from what Herbert might have detailed in his novel. Secondly, we have the actors. From Jürgen Prochnow to Patrick Stewart, it's a solid cast of experienced actors. Yes, there might be something rather stiff about the dialogue and delivery, almost as if you're watching a stage play, but we shouldn't be all that surprised given the amount of thespians that are present in the lineup.
Forced spice evolution of humans changes many things. I must sit close to him.
He will not permit anyone but me to see him. You must be outside this room.
I am your truth sayer, my lord.
Though they are doing as much as they can, most of the characters are lacking in any real development. I'm afraid that's just what happens when you try and condense the 20-odd characters of the novel and their arcs into a 2-hour movie. It can be cheesy and OTT at times. Looking at you, Sting.
I will kill him!
But again, some of the scenes and the deliveries and the power in the performances is just iconic.
I know, Thufir, I'm sitting with my back to the door. I heard you, Dr. Yui, and Gurney coming down the hall.
Those sounds could be imitated.
I'd know the difference.
Yes, perhaps he would have that.
And then we have the score. It's huge, lumbering, and as irresistible as the sand dunes of Arrakis itself. And it was done by Toto. Yes, the Africa guys. It propels the film and matches the bombastic visuals. The squeals of the guitars still ring in my ears to this day.
Now we are ready for battle.
Again, it's just iconic. Brian Eno was also approached to compose the Prophecy theme, which is another extremely powerful part of the movie.
What deep?
As much as I enjoyed and respected the newer version of Dune by Denis Villeneuve, it does at times feel rather sterile and lifeless, like Arrakis itself. It's masterfully made, and the visuals at times, especially the lingering, sumptuous establishing shots that Villeneuve is so fond of, are amazing. The special effects work is far beyond what was available and what was possible in 1984. But Denis Villeneuve often says that he would have liked to have made Dune as a silent movie, and honestly, it shows. The casting and some of the performances just don't match up. Zimmer's score is tribal and ethnic and even grating at times, like a sandstorm, and it certainly adds to the larger-than-life visual experience that is presented. But while I certainly like Villeneuve's Dune, and I concur that it is, even with the few liberties that are taken, the more authentic adaptation of Herbert's work, I don't love it. I love the 1984 version. at the end of the day, David Lynch's Dune might have its issues, but it's got an identity and a feeling of its own that I think A, makes it stand out against all the other versions of Dune that we've had in both film and TV series format, and also stand out from all of the other films of that period. It's avant-garde, baroque, silly and punk rock. It's over the top, bombastic, ridiculous, and it pays homage to the space opera nature of the source material while admittedly missing so many of the deeper themes and messages that lurk beneath the surface narrative, like Shai-Hulud lurks beneath the sands of Dune. Finally, I will mention that some of these omissions are alleviated by the Spice Diver fan edit that I mentioned earlier. It includes a lot of work print footage that just isn't in either of the other cuts, and it goes a long way towards making the 1984 version of Dune's narrative more coherent and whole. It's absolutely worth seeking out. It used to be on YouTube, it doesn't seem to be there now, but it is still on the internet if you know where to look. It is my preferred version of the film, and purportedly even David Lynch thought it was closer than the official versions to what he had originally envisioned. We'll never get what it was that David Lynch originally planned for Dune. He rarely talked about his experiences, and he disowned his compromised and butchered creation. And I think that's a real shame, because flawed as it is, I love the misunderstood gem that is David Lynch's Dune. Thanks for watching. I've been Critic, and we're back with another video soon.